It's a great pleasure and a privilege to be here at the Royal Society to welcome all of our guests and friends to celebrate, first of all, Web Sciences at the University of Southampton, and specifically and more formally to launch our Web Institute, Web Science Institute. Looking at today's programme, we're literally joined by the world's best. We have some of the world's best at the university, and we're joined by the rest. So we better hope there's no accident or anything, or it could be the end of web science as we know it, all in one day. We're especially honoured, of course, to have Professor Sir Tim Berners-Lee with us. Thank you, Tim, very much for finding time to be with us today. I know because of the anniversary of the World Wide Web, this is an exceptionally busy period for you, and we're very grateful that you've been able to join us. I'm also delighted that we're joined by the university's newly appointed visiting professor, Liam Maxwell, the government's chief technology officer, and of course our two keynote speakers, Professor Richard Susskind and JP Rangaswamy. So thank you very much. I'm looking for there he is, for Richard. The Web Science Institute also has support from over 65 industry collaborators, supporters and partners. And I have to say, speaking as a University Vice-Chancellor especially, we value your contribution and sincerely thank you for the generous support that you've offered so far, and I'm sure will continue to offer into the future. Today, we bring together web science-related research from right across the University of Southampton, from our faculties of physical sciences and engineering, social and human sciences, humanities, business and law. Interdisciplinary research is something that the university does with greater ease and confidence than many other universities that I'm familiar with. One reason for this, very simple, is that it's largely grassroots based and self-governing. It's not the product of some grand idea from the Vice-Chancellor's office, thinks it's a good idea today. The truth of the matter is that the launch of the Institute today reflects extraordinary collaboration across the university, where each part of the university has been open-minded to hear the different perspectives that other parts of the university, the different disciplines, bring to web science. It exemplifies so much of what I think that we're good at the University of Southampton. First of all, of course, it offers high-quality research underpinned by this highly respectful and mutually beneficial collaboration between the existing discipline strengths of the university. And I'm particularly and continually impressed by the way in which this collaboration is producing very novel ways of looking at and investigating the phenomenon of the web. It also offers us research-led education, bringing, in fact, in this case, a quite unique educational programme in web science to the university that I think has great potential, not only in terms of attracting students from the UK, but students from all over the world. We already have an established track record in early career academic training, offering, again, a rich interdisciplinary environment for doctoral students and for early career academics who are looking to develop their interests in web science. And last, and by no means least in this case, it represents high impact. It's very clear from the programme, from the way in which the Institute has been established, the partners that we have, that web science research at the University of Southampton is already having an impact on society, and the new knowledge gained from our research is already being transferred into the economy in ways that are quite literally changing the world. We've so much to celebrate in the achievement of individuals and groups in our academic community, and today is a wonderful opportunity to do just that. Of course, such impressive developments don't occur by some mystical process, although I might wish it were the case occasionally. The truth of the matter is there are several individuals who've played extraordinarily important leadership roles in the development of the discipline of web science internationally and specifically at the University of Southampton. You will have seen on your programme, quite typically and properly, the Institute has a broad set of directors. Of course, Wendy Hall is known to all of you, and without Wendy's extraordinary energy and drive, I'm quite certain we wouldn't be here today. Thank you, Wendy, for that. But also, it has to be said, the rest of the cast is pretty strong as well. Nigel Shadbolt, Susan Halford, Les Carr, Lisa Harris and Graham Earl. What an extraordinary combination of talents. What an extraordinary set of different perspectives and disciplines to bring to the development of web science at the university and internationally. Coming from all parts of our university, they really exemplify our commitment to try to work effectively on an interdisciplinary basis. It's obviously going to be a very informative, exceptionally interesting, potentially exciting afternoon, and I'm absolutely delighted to be able to join you for almost all of the afternoon today. Thank you very much for inviting me to come along to the launch of this extraordinary Web Science Institute. Thank you very much.
Don, before you leave the stage, I would just like to say how hugely proud I am of my university this afternoon. I celebrate having graduated from Southampton 40 years ago this month. And yeah, I know, I'm only 82. And I'd also like to thank you for your personal commitment, because without that, you do need a Vice-Chancellor who actually approves the spending of funds. And Southampton has invested a lot in this dream and this vision. And I'd like to thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite my fellow directors up on the stage. This, as Don said, the supporting cast. How can I introduce Nigel as supporting cast? Nigel, Susan and Les, and we'll just explain in any order, we know which order we're going, a bit about how we got here and what our vision is for where we're going. It is 10 years ago, almost to the month. It was May 2004 when we were in a bar in New York with Tim, as you are, right? It was the World Wide Web Conference in 2004 in New York. And as we walked back from that bar to the hotel, Tim said he was worried about the semantic web and why it wasn't happening. And he knew about the work that Nigel and I were doing at Southampton. We've been working with Tim for a long time, and he wanted to think about how we could really explore how he could realise the vision of the semantic web, quicker, better, whatever. And out of that conversation, he introduced us to his colleague Danny Weitzner, a lawyer, who is still working with him at MIT after a stint in the White House. And the four of us started brainstorming in Tim's office over the whiteboard about how the web had grown, how it had evolved. And out of those conversations, which I have to say were very heady and lovely experiences, grew this idea of web science. And I always say, and I still say, there's two things we don't like about web science. The name, one is web, the other science, because it doesn't really convey, the two terms don't really convey the broadness of what we're trying to do. This is the key thing that we started to explore in those early conversations, was that this is not just about technology. It's the people, stupid. It's the, we realised we had to, in order to understand what had happened, what was happening, and what might happen in the future in this world, that is Tim's legacy to the world, is a very socio-technical piece of work. And that has driven our thinking and how we've evolved the concept of web science and what we've done with it, and how we've developed this Web Science Institute. From the very beginning, it was that this is about what people do with the web and how we as a society shape the web as much as it shapes us. And I've learnt the term co-constituted from my social science friends. Is that right? Or something like that. Anyway, no, I have. These two systems, the technology and the social, coming together to create something quite new that has never existed before. This is radically changing everything about the world and everything we do and the way we live, and thinking about how we can keep that the original legacy going in the future, as we are here celebrating 25 years since Tim wrote his initial document describing what he wanted to build in the web. So that was the very start, and we sort of, in 2006, we announced this idea to the world as the Web Science Research Initiative, which was a collaboration set up initially as a collaboration between Southampton and MIT. And it was a bit like jumping off a cliff without wings. We had no idea if anybody would like this idea or think it was relevant or the right thing to study. And here we are 10 years later. I said I'm proud of Southampton, but I'm so proud of all the things we've been showing you in the exhibition of how our vision has taken root and set something going throughout the world that we hope is actually helping the study in this area. We set up the WSI, Web Science Research Initiative, lots of people helped us with it. It became the Web Science Trust, which is a not-for-profit hosted at Southampton. And through that, we've set up the Web Science Trust network of laboratories, which is now 16 laboratories collaborating from all around the world. And you'll see some of the work that we've done with our colleagues from labs in other parts of the world in the exhibition. I want to say my own thank you to everybody. There's too many people to name. They know who they are, who have helped us set up today and set up the exhibition and make it such a lively, exciting event, I hope, for you to see. Our students from the Centre for Doctoral Training that Leslie's going to talk about in a minute. You've got the work on the Web Observatory, the MOOCs we did. We've had a meeting, the Socium project this morning. We have our work with our Fraunhofer colleagues who are here in the Softwired project. So much that we're doing. And what we have done, we set a global fire going, I think, by initiating web science as the idea of a discipline of web science. But actually at Southampton, all the things you see in that exhibition are things we've been doing at Southampton. And this year we decided to bring all that together under one umbrella, so we didn't have to keep explaining to people that we have a CDT and we have a project with this, that and the other, and we wanted to be able to say this is the totality of the work we do in the area of web science at Southampton, and try and explain how broad that is and how interactive and collaborative that is. And it is truly, you'll hear Susan talk about this later, it is a truly cross-university, inter-faculty, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary activity at Southampton that has been significantly supported, funded by the university. So here we are today, very exciting, and I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm going to hand you over to Nigel, so Nigel Shabbot. I want to always call him Mr. Data, Mr. Open Innovation, who's going to tell you about his vision for WSI and the future. Do you want to come up here or stay there?
I'll stay. Thank you, Wendy. Just to say, it has been a huge privilege to kind of get engaged and immersed in the web. And I say that partly because the kind of truth of the matter is that those of us who originate out of artificial intelligence and, in fact, knowledge engineering, there are a few of them in the room, actually. Some of us got the web quite late for various reasons. We were too busy trying to build brains in boxes and smart software and kind of forgot about the network effect. And one of the things that has really always seized me about the web as I've become more and more, see my research more and more kind of expressed and formulated in that way, is the new kind of AI that has emerged. I call it augmented intelligence. It's the fact that together collectively with our machines, with our processing power, we're actually in a place where we can begin to tackle global problems and local problems in a scale and in a way that we didn't anticipate. And that's because of a couple of fundamental things. One is universal and available access to this computing fabric, to the web. An idea which is so fundamentally important to making progress for us as a species and a race that I think it is right that we should be called to defend its rights and values, and I think that's important. The other thing is that when you build an open platform like this, you allow a fundamental democratization of engagement and processes. And if the data's open and if access is open, you discover that fundamental spark of the web, which is unanticipated reuse, unanticipated putting to work of content, ideas, pages, resources that you had never anticipated. Premised on the notion that actually not all the smart people work at Southampton, or indeed MIT, or anywhere else. That there's this huge levelling. And one of the things that has exercised both Tim and I in the last few years has been getting data opened up where you can, where it's not about personal data, where it's non-personal, government-owned data, for example. Opening it up has had huge benefits. And one of the exhibits here is from the Open Data Institute, which we both helped set up, to actually explore how you can create a whole ecosystem of consumers and producers of this resource, of tools and methods to build business, social, economic value out of the widely accessible versions of information and data that we now have. And Tim often says, information has value not by being siloed away, but by being widely available. And so much of it does. And I think what we're trying to do, and the reason that open data as a phenomenon is interesting, of course, it is an exemplar of trying to understand how an idea at web scale can be transformational. So a number of projects, a number of lines of research are looking at just that. Wendy made reference to another piece of work we're engaged with, and Tim is engaged with, called the Socium project, sponsored by the EPSRC. This is a work to try and understand the nature of these social machines that emerge when you have the combination at scale of data and human social transaction and collaboration. And actually, as computer scientists and engineers, we don't see the interesting aspects of that interaction if we're just focusing on the engineering protocols. It is all about social interaction, incentives, the sociability of these processes, why people choose to participate. And I think that's why the methods that we need to embrace and develop are fundamentally interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. And the other element there is that our work impacts not just on the science and technology space, but on a policy space. We engage with and talk to governments. And in an age where governments are wondering what their role might be, and in fact, as this very technology may in some cases be disintermediating classic parts of that function, and we'll probably hear more from that from Liam Maxwell, the UK CTO, later on, it's really interesting to reflect that politicians are aware of, slightly daunted by, but also critically engaged with the question of how will this technology, this science, this capability change and impact society. And for good or ill, we really do need to have very informed conversations with our political class. And that's something else that I think is terribly important, and it's why I'm always so impressed to see the breadth and range of students we're recruiting now into web science. We need legal, economic, social science, as well as engineering, computing, and mathematical perspectives on the subjects, because the web is a systems-level phenomena that doesn't respect careful disciplinary boundaries. Okay, and that's probably a moment to hand over.
I may say nothing else now. I can stand here because I like to.
This is Professor Susan Halford, who I've grown to know and love over this, and we've supervised many PhD students together now, and breaking down those barriers is quite a hard thing to do.
I'll say a bit more about that. Thank you very much. I mean, in one way, I'm absolutely delighted that what I want to say has almost been made redundant by the things that Don has said, and also Wendy and Nigel. But if you'll forgive me, I am going to say a little bit more about interdisciplinarity. I think that you will have got the message now that the founding principle of web science is that the web is at once both technical and, in the very broadest possible sense, social. If we think of the origins of the web, We can see that its origins lie, of course, in the cultural and scientific imagination. They lie in the particular combination of political, social and economic circumstances that characterised the West in the post-war period. And of course, they lie in a genealogy of scientific and technical innovation. It's been an absolutely amazing journey over the past 25 years. There's people here who are much better placed to comment on that than I am. But just to throw out a series of emblematic phrases that characterise some of that journey. From CERN, we go through Mosaic, CompuServe, chat rooms, Amazon, Facebook, PayPal, Bitcoin, LimeWire, HTML5, Netflix, Prism. All of those things encapsulate within them the absolute essence of the social and the technical that comprises the web. We can't think about any of them without thinking of them as being at once both social and technical, driven by technical innovation, but also driven by social action and social imperatives. And of course, as Nigel said, I think it was Nigel, these kinds of actions, these kinds of innovations have taken place, of course, in research laboratories. Of course, they've taken place inside large corporations, but they've also taken place in dorm rooms and in kitchens, in earthquake zones and in the underworlds of organised crime. All of these things are implicated in driving the web, and the list, of course, goes on. So it's a history that combines an amazing creativity and innovation with some very familiar social, political, and economic processes. And together, these things are changing our world. They're producing new and less familiar opportunities and threats, and things we could simply never have predicted, I believe, 25 years ago, and that we still don't understand very well. So if we want to understand the web better, given everything I've said about where it's come from and how it has co-evolved, we need to get going on thinking not only about where it's come from, but where it's going to go. Because one thing's for sure, and everybody in this room knows this, the web is not going to stand still. We mustn't take it for granted. It's not just going to stay here now like this because we might happen to like it like this. And there's going to be all kinds of constraints and power relationships and processes that are pushing to shape it in various directions that we may not be so keen on. So it's really important that we understand where we're going to equip ourselves as individuals, but also as citizens and as governments in shaping the future of the web. Now that demands, as everybody has said already, that we think outside some of the familiar silos of research and some of the very familiar and almost easy repertoires that we're used to in the disciplines that most of us have been trained in as researchers or as students or in our education. We have to move beyond the fact that just because the post-Enlightenment organisation of universities happens to have divided us up into these particular kinds of disciplinary silos, the web doesn't present itself to us in those nice, neat silos. It doesn't say, here you are, here's the legal bit, here you are, here's the social bit, here you are, here's the engineering bit. It presents itself to us, and we are implicated in developing it as a mess that in the nicest possible way, that combines all of those things in exciting, unpredictable, unexpected and challenging sorts of ways. And I think it is beholden on us to respond to that in ways that transcend those silos, that force us out of our comfort zone. And I think we owe it as web scientists to the world, if that's not too grand to say so, to be willing to do that. Now, as Wendy said, that's not always easy. I think multidisciplinarity, interdisciplinarity, we could debate terms. It's a really nice idea. You can make a really strong rhetorical case for it, but actually doing it can be a bit more challenging. I don't know if this will be a surprise to most of you. I guess not. There are hierarchies in academia. There are conflicts. There are different ways of seeing the world. There are some disciplines who believe that there's only one way of seeing the world. And all of these things can pose some really profound challenges, even for people who are really committed to working together. It can take some time to find a common ground. And I'm looking at Les in particular, because, well, he doesn't think we've got common ground, maybe. But, you know, it takes time. It takes a lot of investment. It takes a leap of faith. And it means that you have to put your money where your mouth is and really put the investment into doing that work. And that's what we've been doing at Southampton over the past 5, 6, some of us longer, 7, 8 years. And we've been incredibly privileged to be supported by RC UK in doing that, to be supported by the University of Southampton in doing that, and a variety of other funding bodies and research councils. It's been a really steep learning curve. For me personally, it's been one of the most exciting times of my academic life. I've just loved it. It's been a privilege to be part of it. And where Southampton is now is 5, 6, 7 years down the line from where a lot of other universities are saying they would now like to be. We're ahead of that curve, I think, if it doesn't sound too arrogant to say it. We have a lot of investment in the bank. We are going to use that to push forward the Web Science Institute and to help us develop the kinds of methodologies, the kinds of concepts and the kinds of innovations that are worthy of the extraordinary opportunities and challenges that the web poses to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. And now Professor Leslie Carr, who actually is I think the only person at Southampton to have the title of Professor of Web Science.
At the moment,
and I remember when he was writing the first web drivers for the Apple Mac for the Doomsday Disk back in 1990, whatever. And here he is, Professor of Web Science, to talk about the Doctoral Training Centre.
Thank you very much. So our doctoral training activity, of course, is centred in the Web Science Institute. You've been hearing a lot about that, about how the Institute brings together people across the university, as Susan's just said. I wasn't trying to imply that we didn't have any common ground. Rather, we do have common ground, and it's been the discovery of that which has been such a joy. So the Web Science Institute is trying to discover these ways to analyse the methods, the methodologies, to focus on the web and to see its impact and to guarantee its continued impact. And what our Centre for Doctoral Training attempts to do is to bring together those academics from all sorts of disciplines with those students. We've commented today earlier on how difficult interdisciplinarity is. How do you know when you've got it? And one of the things, actually, it's not us as professors who are doing it. The people who are really doing it are our students. We put people together, we put students together with a professor in sociology and a professor in computer science, and we tell that, right, you find out what interdisciplinarity is. You work out how to do something, how to produce a model of the web, of the world that it's in, which satisfies, sort of all of these theoretical constraints. And they have been doing this. We have been so privileged to see this happening with our students and seeing them apply new models to the web and generating new understanding. And we've seen that with the examples of that. We have one student who's currently working in a part of the British Empire, bringing the benefits of the web in terms of political engagement and e-democracy and e-voting to the Turks and Caicos Islands, which is fantastic. And at the other end of the spectrum, we have another student who's with us today, not in Turks and Caicos, so I can only apologise, Phil, who has been looking at a different kind of political engagement, at the politics of protest, how the web works in that environment, sort of in protests, in squats and in sort of engagements and clashes and marches, what is actually going on? So we try to cover as much of this human experience of observing and understanding the world. So, and another part of the CDT, which is hugely important and which we've been set up for, is to engage with industry, with business and with the government. And so we've been very privileged recently, even here, to meet up with people from industry, different groups, and from security services, from government, and work together with our students on some really interesting questions. So February, we were here showing off our research week. looking at how our students working in groups with groups of people from industry, looking at the web and retail, but not looking at how how advertisers can exploit the web to find out what we want, but how do people use the web to find what they want? How do we buy things on the web? And to do some in-depth looking at that. One group of students doing that, another group of students working with the Ordnance Survey, trying to find out how you motivate this new phenomenon of crowdsourcing, of social machines. What kinds of people are being motivated? What kinds of people aren't? Why are there so many men who are interested in mapping things and so few women who are interested in giving away the locations where they live? Discuss. Working with advertisers to come up with new ideas about what is the value of a web page, of a web resource, how not just economic value, but theories of social and cultural capital, how that adds to our understanding of what we see in the web. How it is that the web is being used in dark ways, how you can go onto sites and order someone to come up and do an attack against someone else's website, a business competitor, fund a denial of service attack against their website. And this was something that the police were asking us to look at, and also the use of the rising tide of novel psychoactive substances, what some people call legal highs. How are we seeing this? Where is the knowledge about this coming from? How are people talking about using these substances? And this was something that's come out of a very painful personal experience of people in the team. So doing all of these things, training our students, training our researchers in new interdisciplinary methods, putting them together with industry and with business and with government agencies, and helping them to find new answers. So the Doctoral Training Centre that we established 5 years ago was one of the first things that we were funded to do in web science. Wonderful part of the RC UK Digital Economy programme. We had £6 million over 8 years to fund to 50 students. We have this cohort of 50 students. We've just taken in our last intake. It's been wonderful. And the purpose was to promote a deep understanding of the web in society and to stimulate research. You can see our cohort, one of our cohorts there standing on the stairs. We've now have a new thing. You see the difference? It was a doctoral training centre. That's a centre for doctoral training. Go and ask the EPSRC. They changed their mind. And you can see our cohort now. They're too big to go on the stairs. We have to get them outside on the grass. And the aim is to really start building on that understanding we have about the web, and to understand how to generate new kinds of value in the digital economy, social value, economic value, cultural value, and to train our students as leaders in this area. So it's been something I've been immensely privileged to be involved in. These students are fantastic, but we really are dropping them in it as they're creating this new interdisciplinary web science.